We are going to start working on our last project of the house, our last big project, which is going to be installing the floor. And after we install the floor is pretty much we can move into the house, after we do all the baseboards and all the little details. But that's the big project that we're going to be starting soon, and I'm going to film the process. Right now, we are just prepping the floor, so we're making sure it's clean. We're probably going to do a really good sweep or good mop, and Hector's just going around with this patching cement, I guess you could call it. And he's just filling in all any areas where there's a lot of holes and missing floor tiles, because we, again, I think I said this in an earlier video, we didn't remove the vinyl. These are like vinyl tiles that the house originally had, and we did not remove those, but there's some spots that needed to be filled in so that the floor is even. And this is the flooring. So we're doing luxury vinyl planks again, like we did in the last house. And this time we purchased these planks. They're a little thicker than the ones we had before. And they also already have this like padded underlayment, or it's a pad, so we don't have to roll out underlayment like we did at the other house. So pretty much it's just we lay down these tiles and then they click together, but we'll kind of show that in more detail later. Okay, so here we are doing some planning for the floor. We already swept and mopped the whole house. I didn't film that because you guys don't want to see us cleaning our floors. But we are now at the planning stage, and Hector is going to explain a little bit about what he's doing, how we're planning the layout of the floor before we can even get started with starting to lay it down.
Okay, so how I'm trying to plan this out is based on just my experience from doing the other house. I'm sure there's a professional way of planning it out, but this is just what I've come up with. Being that we got a hallway here and we're going to work our way into the hallway and to each bedroom, I have to kind of plan how I want to lay these planks. So here I have 3 planks and I measured them and I got 27 inches. If I add another plank, it'd be 36 inches, and it'd be just shy about an inch to cover this hallway if I was to go 4 planks. And that would leave me a section of trim that I have to fill in all along the hallway, and loft-to-size hallways aren't exactly parallel. They are true, so I might end up being just shy of a ½ inch, and I don't want to have that gap. So by centering them and cutting halves on each end, and as I go, I'll avoid that problem. So this is kind of where I got my starting point as far as laying them out, just to know where it's going to land up. So if you go over here, I kind of stagger them, and then we're going to kind of go all the way to the wall and make sure that we have also not a 1 inch gap there. And once we find that, we know what measurement to start with, and then we start from that end and work our way into the hallway and into the rest of the house. But just that little planning sometimes helps avoid further hiccups or headaches.
So here's what we did. Hopefully I can explain this in a way that makes sense, but just so that we know where to start and how to start, as Hector was mentioning, we measured these 5 planks in a row, which ends up being 45 inches. So then we just went across here and measured 45 inches, marked a line there, another line here. And then basically from here to here, so each plank is 9 inches. So from here to this line here is 9 inches. So that will be a whole plank. But then we wanted to get this measurement from here to here because it's not actually 9, it's a little less. So we know that we're gonna be having to cut the planks that are gonna go along the edge to fit in this area here. So that is, we're probably actually gonna start laying them from this corner and working our way out into the room and into the other sections of the house. So we need to know what we need to cut the planks along that edge. So that was the purpose of doing the measuring and the planning again, so that we're centered when we get to this part of the house and we're not having to cut really thin sections of floor. Something else that's part of prepping is laying out the different patterns of the floor. So I went ahead and opened up several boxes, and then I separate them out based on the different patterns because they all have kind of their distinct pattern, but the patterns repeat, of course, because it's not real wood. So what I do is I kind of look for distinctive characteristics. Like for example, this one has this like really dark, like curved line. So if I ever see that, then that goes into this category. And so each one has like a little characteristic I look for, and I put them, I group them in their patterns. That way, when we're laying the floor, we try not to put two of the same floor next to each other. It's going to be hard to avoid because so far I've only seen 4 patterns. The last floor that we bought had 6 different patterns, but that's okay because we'll try our best to not put 2 of the same exact ones next to each other, or even if we have to put 2 of the same one, hopefully it won't be the same section of the floor that gets put next to it, so that it looks a little more aesthetically pleasing. And that's another part of prepping for this type of floor, just for if you ever have to do this. Okay, so we've started, or I should say Hector has started a section of the floor here, and we're having a little bit of trouble with this floor. We've installed this type of floor in the other house, but it was a different brand, and these planks are much thicker. We don't really know what is causing the issue, but they don't snap together as easily as we remember them snapping together before. Usually, you start from left to right and you just go a plank at a time. You should be able to clip in the long edge and kind of slide it and then clip in the short edge, but these are just proving to not be as easy to install for some reason. So I'll take some close-up shots of what this floor looks like. Again, this is called tongue and groove, and it's because they kind of fit together like a little puzzle piece. So on one end you have the tongue, which the part where the top overhangs, this would be the tongue here. And then on the opposite end you have the groove, which is where the bottom portion of the floor kind of sticks out. So as you can see, they kind of fit together like a puzzle piece. I'll show you what this looks like in the cross section. So these are 2 pieces that are together, and you kind of have to angle one at a 45-degree angle so that it fits right perfectly into that spot where it just clicks in nicely. And that's where we're kind of running into these issues, is when you have it attached on one end, it doesn't really want to snap in very easily on the other end, whether you snap the long end first and are trying to snap this short end, or whether you start this way and are trying to snap this way. That's where we're kind of running into the issues. Another thing to note with laying down luxury vinyl planks or laminate or anything wood, in order to kind of give it that more natural look, you want to randomize the seams. In other words, you wouldn't lay it down like tile. You don't do like, the same pattern over and over, you kind of have to randomize it. So for example, this first plank is, it's from here to here, and that's just kind of a random, you know, size that was chosen. And then from there, you use whole planks until you would get to the end, and the end you just cut it to fit wherever it needs to go. And then when you start your next row, you choose another random size. So sometimes if you cut a piece off of that end, you can then use it to start your new end, and it should be a different length than the previous one. One thing to note is you do not want the seams from one row to the next to be less than 8 inches from each other. You also don't want the size of your plank to be less than 8 inches, just in general. And of course, you don't want the seams to repeat. So if you have this seam here in this location, you want to at least 2 planks before you do a similar size or a similar seam. So you wouldn't want that same seam obviously on the next one. You also wouldn't want it on this one. At minimum, you can repeat it on this third one. And that's just to give it, of course, that kind of natural wood look. And we have to make sure that we're maintaining at least a 3/8 inch gap in between the floor and the wall. That's what those little spacers, those little black spacers are there for. And that, of course, is just to allow the floor to expand and move as needed. That's an important part of doing flooring.
This is footage of us cutting planks, but I will not be explaining the different types of cuts and how we did it because I actually did that in a previous video. So I will be linking that video below so you can check that out.
Flooring in the kitchen's done. Woohoo! Little update. This is the results of our work this weekend. So happy to say that we managed to get all the living spaces done. So the entrance. Excuse the mess, it's kind of crazy in here. The kitchen, done. The whole living room area is done. Hector spent a good amount of time cutting around the rock, cutting pieces to go around the rock for the fireplace. The hallway is also done. That also took some time because I had to cut thin boards to go all along. So we still have to do the rooms. 3 bedrooms to go. Sorry, it's dark. I calculated it, and we have about 430 square feet left. The reason I calculated it was because I started getting really nervous because it seems like we were going through the floor really quickly, and I was afraid that we actually, by the way, we're living in the garage right now. I was afraid that we weren't going to have enough because that's how much we have left, and it didn't look like a lot for 3 bedrooms, but I calculated it and we actually should be okay. We should be okay and even have a little bit left over. So we're doing good. This is a weekend's worth of work. So we're hoping that by the end of next weekend, we will be completely done with the floor. And it's been a little bit of a pain, but once we kind of got used to how this floor, the little tricks of how to do this floor, it went by relatively smoothly. Cool. Okay, we're getting closer to the end here. Hector had a day off yesterday, so he did a lot of work, and of course, he didn't really film it. So the flooring in the master bedroom is done. We were gonna have to go this direction, which is the opposite of what we've been doing. So basically going backwards of the direction we've been going most of the time. So it was a little challenging, Hector said, just to do the opposite direction. I think the boards don't click in as well in this direction versus the other direction. But Hector already did kind of the more challenging parts, which is just getting around the doorways, having to cut the pieces, the planks, so that they fit under the doorways, and then clicking them into place is, these are basically pretty challenging little spots, but he's kind of done more of the challenging areas, and now what's left is relatively simple, except for, of course, when we get into that closet over there, but that's just a little space. So we're hoping to get this done today. Okay, so now that we are almost done with the flooring in the house, Hector kind of finally developed a good technique, of course. Usually when you get towards the end of a project is when you figure out how to do it, right? So I'm just gonna show you guys how we do this. I think I might have explained earlier, but we assemble all the end joints together, and those are all together now. So the way that we now have to connect it to the floor, as you see here, these are not closed, so you can see that white seam, and we need to close that up, and we're going to do the whole row at a time. So first I start off by putting my spacers at the end. That's just so that, when I hit it from the other end, it doesn't get to the wall. So first I'm gonna use the pull bar, and I'm just gonna hit it to tighten all the short end seams. Now we're not clipped in on the long edges yet, but this is just to get all the short end seams in place. So they should be locked in pretty good. Now we're gonna start doing the long end. You kind of have to just work your way through it. But I put my little rubber block like this, because you can do it this way, but remember, these need to kind of come in at an angle and to be able to clip in. So to do that, you have to kind of lift the whole thing up, and I kept hitting it and like breaking these ends. So if you do it this way, it's a little bit better and you won't damage the ends as easily. But then you do want to kind of, so it lifts it up as you can see, but you want to push down here, and then snap it in, and then you kind of just move this along. And you slowly work your way across the row. You should start to see that those white seams go away and they're starting to close. You want them to close pretty tight. I'm just gonna keep it. Sometimes I see it won't close all the way. That's okay. You'll get it eventually. Usually when you get to the end, you'll see that it closes pretty nice. But we're gonna do, you know, at the end, we'll make sure everything's good. So now we just kind of inspect, and we want to close. Even if there's a tiny gap, you want to just try to close it. So I usually just go a final time. Even if I don't really see gaps, I kind of just make sure everything's really tight and closed. Just like that. And then just for the final, we do this again to make sure again short end seams are nice and tight. And then because I hit it so close to this wall, these spacers are probably really wedged in there pretty tight, I just bring it back a little bit. And that row's done, and then we move on to the next row. And again, this floor is a little different. Our other floor wasn't quite like this. Our other floor, we were able to just do one at a time and clip them in. So depending on what, if you're trying to do this, depending on what floor you buy, you know, you kind of just have to get to know that floor and any little quirks or tricks that you might have. Yeah. We are done with the floor. Just wanted to do final walkthrough. We also already put all the baseboards, so we are getting ready to actually move all of our furniture in today and tomorrow. So here's the kitchen. That little area was actually pretty tricky to do. We ended up having to do it a couple times because things didn't quite line up the first time. This is where it all started, where we started the floor. And kind of just worked our way through, but everything's looking pretty great. It took us a total of 2 full weekends to do everything, which isn't too bad. Again, this floor was a little trickier than the last time we did this, but we're just glad it's done. And we have the closet too. So that concludes this project video. Hopefully you learned a few things about putting this floor down, if that's something that you think you might want to try doing in your own house. And we'll see you guys on the next one. And while we're working hard doing this is all he does all day. Why does every project we do have problems. Just don't understand. And then baseboards will be next. And I don't have anything else to say.